I had a normal childhood, loving parents, two brothers, younger brothers. But I remember in school that I never fitted in. I never felt like I fitted in, and that made me angry. So I used to cause a lot of chaos in school, vandalizing, fighting, and that feeling never, doesn't matter what I did, never went away. Then I got to, but actually progressed to such an extent that I was in a couple of primary schools and high schools. Then I was sent to reformatory, where I finished my matric at the age of 15, and then I was let to go out in the world, still not fitting in anywhere. Met my first husband, and he introduced me to, well, as you guys know, it now, but heroin. I started smoking at the age of 15, 16. Um, well, actually 15, was that same year still, when I finished matric. And it was within weeks, I was also spiking, injecting heroin. And I can relate to what he said about the sickness. It feels like when you don't have your drug, it's not you want to stop, you so badly want to stop using. It's not nice taking your parents' stuff. It's not nice stealing people's cars. It's not nice selling yourself. But the agonizing pain you go through, it feels like your flesh is getting torn off your body. Everything is aching and paining, and you're throwing up, and it feels like you're going to die. So during my journey, up until this point, I have done a lot of things I'm not very proud of due to addiction. And yeah, I ended up on the street, evidently, after losing my first husband, who was murdered. My second husband committed suicide. My brother died at the beginning of this year, on the 25th of March. Also, he didn't overdose, but how can I put it? It was drug related. He had a seizure, a heart attack, and then multiple organ failure because he was so weak that he couldn't carry on. I was looking after him. But at this point, I was also 25 kilos on the street, on crutches. I had maggots coming out of my legs. My hip had made a very big abscess. The doctors are fixing it now, but I mean, it's going to take time. And I remember standing at the robot begging and for money for us. And this lady came to me, someone stopped, and they asked me, would I take help? And up until this point, I actually just wanted to die. I didn't want to live anymore. My son has been taken away due to my own, what I've done. Everything I loved has been taken away from me. So now, here's this person that comes up to me, dirty, I'm thin, I'm a drug addict, I'm begging at the robot, and she's giving me a chance to maybe there's a slight chance I can change my life. So I say yes. Now after this one very small, I thought it was a small decision, but it was quite a huge, because after just one decision, everything happened so quickly. God played such a big role from there that I decided, okay, I do not want to die anymore, I want to live. The next day I went to hospital, where I detoxed, because with NAPA you need medication, or because you can die. Obviously the physical state I was in, it was bad. So I needed hospitalization. I went to a public hospital, which was not nice, obviously. After that, I was booked in. I was actually given, because now I'm homeless. My family didn't want anything to do with me at this time. And even if they did, they weren't financially, because I've ruined them, me and my brother. So this lady that helped me was connected with like a fellowship, like Alcoholics Anonymous. And in the fellowship, she made a couple of phone calls, and I ended up by a rehab called Tranquility in London, where it's something I would never be able to afford. And the owner of this place, Gibson, gave me 7 days for free. Now, I was so malnourished and so weak, I couldn't walk up the stairs. As I said, I was 25 kilos at the time. The people in the rehab had to carry me up and down the stairs for about the first week or so. And for the first time in my life, how can I say, they introduced me to the 12-step program, and I actually found God. I always knew he was there. He always looked after me and his luck, but I was always suggesting to him, and I never really understood the greatness of God. So, and there I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, which he did. Just what I wanted to say was like, when when as a child, or as if you don't fit in, ask for help. Even if you are in a position where you feel, shit, I can't stop, or I need something to make me feel better, speak to somebody. Don't be shy to speak to someone. Ask for help. Pick the right person that you are comfortable to speak to and speak to them. I mean, if I did that, I would never have gotten, as I said, into prostitution. I would have never ended up on the street. I would have never almost lost my legs. This by the grace of God, because obviously he had a bigger plan for my life. And today I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, that's me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I would like to now call Ms. Kanyima Gubani, who is going to facilitate our panel discussion. Kanyima Gubani is a radio and TV presenter, TV and film producer, and we are so honored to have you facilitate this discussion, and we hope everyone will benefit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oktula, what a powerful story. To you, my sister, I just want you to know that God has you. So many people have not lived to share the testimony that you have today. But God has a plan for your life. They say there's no testimony without a test. And you've been through the most, and here you are today. Can we just give a round of applause? Today, as we're going to have this discussion, I think we've been for a long time. What would I share? And it became clear that it's not about what I would share, but that so many of us just need to reflect on our own lives. I get no one in this room that can say substance abuse doesn't affect me. It may not be you personally, but we've got parents in this house, Namhlanje. We've got young people. It may be you, it may be a friend, it may be somebody you know at school, somebody you know at university, but today we're here to share the message that you are not alone. But there is the restorative, there is the healing power of God that is at play in each and every one of us. And there is no situation, and there is no drug abuse, there is no substance, there is nothing that you can go through that God cannot heal. And so today we're going to have a discussion where we're going to bring experts to come and talk to us. But we're also going to speak about the aspects of faith. Because without God, truly, she wouldn't be standing here today. She wouldn't be here today. So it's nothing that I have to talk about in theory. She is here as a testimony, and she has a testimony that she can share with each and every one of us. And we do have more questions and more details that we're going to share. But without wasting any time, I'd like to call my panel that's going to be assisting us in our discussion this afternoon or this evening. I'd like to start by asking Uphumlani Somakala to come on stage. Uphumlani is a senior counselor at the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. You see how he ran up the stairs, full of energy. He's also studying his master's. He's doing his master's in clinical psychology, and he is focusing on the stigmatization of mental health in Black communities. So really looking at the way that we view mental health in Malokishini and even in our own communities. Let me also call Bongani Ndlovu. He is from the Soul City Institute. He's a senior manager for media and content development, and he's produced programs like Soul City, which I'm sure many of you have seen on television. He's also produced radio programs for Soul City, and he's even produced programs like Intersections, where he was a consultant. So he's really a health communications expert. Let me also welcome Evan Meyer. He is from Tranquility Home, and he is a senior counselor. Thank you so much. I'd like to start off and ask you, Evan. Is it working? Are you cool? When Jeanne was sharing her testimony, you were the person whose hands she was delivered. Share with us some of those early days.
The early days is very, very difficult because the patient's going through some severe withdrawal symptoms. Some of the symptoms that they go into is like severe body ache, cold sweats, hot sweats, body pain, nausea, bilious feelings. And John Marie was a really, really, very sad case because we took her in and we were scared that she was going to die. But we took a chance on her and she ate little bit by little bit. She was taking the medication that we were giving her. The medication stopped her withdrawals. At Tranquility Clinic there is no withdrawal symptoms, so we free you of that. And she grew from strength to strength. And to be able to counsel a person like that is a tremendous honor, to be honest. She was open to the God concept from the beginning. She was ready to receive God, and she did. And we have a spiritual component to Tranquility, which we talk about the higher power of your understanding. We preach the gospel of God, and we treat people who are really, really sick. We have the Nyaupe hands that we treat. A lot of them come from the townships. It's not from the poor community, and it's peer pressure that, like John Marie was saying, peer pressure. You do it with your friends, you do it with your colleagues, and it becomes a real problem when you use it longer than, I would say, 21 days, and you become addicted to it straight away.
And when it comes to issues of withdrawal and the physiological impact that it has, I'm going to come back to you to talk a little bit more about that, because I'd like to ask to follow a journey of somebody. How do you start being an addict? We've seen Jeanne-Marie sharing that she didn't feel like she fitted in, and in a way drugs helped her to escape. And I want to bring Phumlani. You are working as a senior counselor at the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. Tell us more about the work that you do there.
Okay, is it working?
It's working,
okay.
yes.
South African Depression and Anxiety Group, it's a mental health organization. You know, we focus on all aspects of mental health and substance abuse. The reason why we also focus on substance abuse is because in most cases, people who use substances, they don't just start by using substances. There's, psychological issues that leads them to using substance abuse. Things like depression. In most cases, when people have depression, they tend to do what we call self-medication, by taking drugs, alcohol, nyobe and stuff, because it makes them feel better. It makes them forget their problems. So as South African Depression, we do talks, we go around doing talks about mental health and substance abuse. We also do counseling. We have 18 different helplines that people can call us at. We also have 24 helplines which they can reach us at if they want someone to talk to. And yeah, we do a lot of school talks, community talks, and we also find people rehearse. You as the member of the panel has said, John, that people need to go to rehab in order for them to, when they have a problem with substance abuse. You find that you come from a township, you don't have money. To be honest, rehabs are very expensive.
Right.
So we also have rehabs that that are free, which are subsidized by government. So we know those rehabs, and when you call us, we can be able to assist you to be able to be accepted in the rehab. But there's going to be a process that is going to take place before you can go into any rehab.
Let me bring you in, Phumlani. You're working for the Soul City Institute, and as much as we know you for all your radio and your TV content, but Soul City Institute runs from January to January, whether you're on air or off air, you know, and you're really in health issues, and substance abuse is one of the issues that you deal with at Soul City. Tell us more about the interventions that you are a part of as the Soul City Institution.
Thanks, Kanye, and maybe also let me take this opportunity and greet everyone in the house in the languages. So I, you know, as a woman working for Soul City, just to answer your question, we've got a number of interventions, and the way we do the interventions that we do at a bigger scale is because, you know, I think every social problem in the country, for people to really take it serious, it has to be on a bigger scale,
Right.
on mass media, right? Because you want to activate something in the hearts and in the minds of people. In Yawupe, for instance, the clip that we watched earlier, you know, when I was doing that production, my attitude changed towards abantu ababhema iNyawupe, because I think we've got this thing. In fact, most of us have got this thing when these boys come, you know, they're begging in the streets, they're coming to your car, you know, like asking for money, like, take money, you know? Or sometimes you just turn a blind eye,
Or we roll up the window.
exactly.
Yes.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So because we do not understand that in fact there's no normal person who would actually do what they do. But the addiction actually drives them to do what they do. Because you know, the David was saying that, you know, it's not that ngiyathanda ukuthi ngizinjecte enyaweni. But if there's no veins in my hand, you know, so you know definitely that in fact this person is not normal. But there is something that actually drives them to do what they do. And my attitude really changed in understanding of what addiction is a sickness. And addiction is a sickness, it needs to be treated. People should not be prosecuted because they're addicted. So we do the work that we do because we want to provoke, you know, people's emotion. We also want to educate people so that people really understand, you know, the deeper levels of addiction, because it's people are sick. That's the long and short of it.
On our chairs, you would have noticed when you came back from the break that there is material that has been placed on each and every seat that is from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. There are numbers on those pamphlets. There's also the wristbands, and we've really shared that material so that you can, you know, be able to see what it is that they do, but also if you do need that practical help and you're able to ask. I want to share also that we are going to be taking your questions. If you look to the screens on either side, there is a WhatsApp number there where you can WhatsApp your question. We know that there's a mixed group here. There's parents, there's young people, and we are aware that especially young people, you may not always feel comfortable sharing something with your parents and elders are here. So what we've done is we've created a system where you can ask us your question, but you don't have to say your name. Okay, you don't have to say hi, I'm wherever. But if you do have a question that you would love to ask, here's a WhatsApp number that you can send your question to, and it will flash on the screen. We do also have pieces of paper where you can also write your question, and we do have 3 individuals who will be walking around during the Q&A session with the microphone, and you can also have an opportunity to ask your question, or you can hand somebody a piece of paper to ask that question, and again, you don't have to say your name because we want to be as transparent and as open as possible. Let me come back to you, Evan. And you know, he was saying that drug addiction is not a crime. It's a sickness. However, in the process of being a drug addict, you do break the law. That I think is where the law does come in. It's not the illness itself, but it's what you do. You know, Jeanne spoke about illness, you know, leading her to do a lot of things that she's not proud of. And Jeanne, maybe let me bring you in here. You know, you intersected with the law a number of times. Maybe tell us a bit about that.
Well, yeah, I was locked up 4 times. I went to prison
4 times.
4 times. Only awaiting trial. I was never sentenced, thank God. Also doing things for my addiction, things that I would never, ever think of doing, like now. But it pushed me to such a point that I had to make a plan. And whatever came, I did it. Whether it was stealing cars, whether it was...
You can steal a car.
Yeah. I could. I choose not to do that anymore. But yeah, or whether it would be whatever comes my way on this, like on the street, and the kind of people that you get involved with. It is such a dangerous lifestyle. Gangsters and drug lords and the stuff, because you look innocent at the time, you know, before the drugs really take over and you're just on the street. But they use you to your full potential, if I can put it like that, and they will make you do anything because you're so how can I put it, afhankelijk.
You're desperate.
Dependent. You're so dependent on that drug that you will do anything just not to have that withdrawals. So yeah.
Pumlani, you work in an institution where people call you on a daily basis. You work as a counselor. You field a lot of calls. You know, people saying, I have a problem. I have anxiety. I'm depressed. I'm addicted. Tell us, or give us a picture of what's happening out there according to the calls that you're getting, the cries for help that are reaching your hotline that you run as SEDEC.
Okay. By the way, I'm working tonight, so if you happen to call us, you might speak to me. So yeah, and you know, there's a lot of issues out there. Like people are going through the worst. You know, you might see someone walking on the street wearing a nice tuxedo and think driving a nice Mercedes Benz and think everything's okay. You know, everyone is affected by mental health, especially depression. It doesn't choose whether you are rich or you are poor. And trust me, depression can lead you to being an addict. It can lead you to using drugs because you want to numb the pain that you're feeling. You know, you want to, you know, to feel like you belong somewhere. And in most cases, you're gonna end up being, you know, surrounding yourself with the wrong group. The group that will, you know, make you, not even make you, that will inspire you to use drugs because you're gonna see them as if they're happy and you want to have that happiness. So coming to talk about calls that we get a lot of different calls. You know, mostly we get calls about, you know, family issues, especially relationships. We get calls of people are going through financial issues, which can lead to depression. We get calls of people who, like young people who feel like their parents, they don't understand them. Because, you know, we grew up in a culture where, like I grew up in a township, I'm from Tembisa, you know, so you grew up in a township or grew up in a rural area where you don't have a good relationship with your father, you can't speak to your father, you're going through the worst, you know, and as a child you've been raped. You go to your mom and tell your mom that, you know, my uncle has raped me. The first thing that they do, they try to cover up. And they tell you, you're not going to talk about this. Or they blame you for that. And as a child, you feel like no one cares about you. And that will lead you to depression. And depression might lead you to using drugs or committing suicide. You know, per day, as SADC, we get plus minus 600 calls from people, you know, seeking help, you know, crying for help. You know, some you might find that it's a minor thing, some, you know, it's serious issues. But to us as SADC, we don't have, you know, we take each and every case serious. Doesn't matter even if you come to us and say, my girlfriend just dumped me, you know, I feel like committing suicide. That's a serious case because we know cases of people who have killed themselves because the relationship didn't go well. You know, we know cases of people who have committed suicide because, you know, they had a clinical depression. You know, clinical depression is when you just cannot live at all. But one thing that we always try to the message that we try to tell people is that there is help. You know, suicide should not be a secret. Using drugs should not be your resort. You know, falling into depression alone should not be, you know, the resort. You can get help. You know, we have psychologists, we have psychiatrists, we have counselors, we even have doctors who can assist you. You know, to a point, because some people who are depressed, they have to use, unfortunately, they have to use medication. You know, and the most important thing, as a church, I believe that we also have counselors at church. where people can go to the counselors and talk, with the counselors, with whatever that they're going through. Because it's very important that, because we find people who will come to us and say, look, do you believe in God? As a counselor, in most cases, I have to be neutral, but at the same time, when someone comes to you and say, do you believe in God? Obviously, I do believe in God. Then they'll start asking you about, do you think if I kill myself, am I committing a sin? Those kind of things. And that's where the church has to come in. And as a church, when someone comes to you and say, when I commit suicide, is that a sin? Am I going to go to heaven or hell? You have to attack that conversation in a very, very careful way. Don't say, yes, you're going to go to hell. Or don't say, yes, no, you're not going to go to hell. But you have to make the person understand the importance of living and not taking their life. So we get a lot of different calls, and different situations, and each and every call is different. I can get a suicide call. I can get like 5 suicide callers, in a space of an hour. But I will deal with each and every case different because, as humans, we're not the same. So we cannot treat each case the same.
Yeah, but just on what he's raising, when people come to tranquility, there's the physiological part of it, but there's the emotional and the psychological part. Talk to us about that.
We find that a lot of our patients come in and they've got emotional trauma. 90% of my female patients have been raped before in some form or the other, or sexual abuse. 90% of my patients have tried suicide or planned to commit suicide. And feelings of loneliness, feelings of depression, feelings of abandonment, feelings of not belonging, these are all what we call triggers. These triggers, they put the people into a position where they feel they're not adequate, they're not good enough, they're not loved enough. And we find that a lot of the patients have come through a lot of physical and psychological trauma before they come to tranquility.
Right. And how do you deal with that? Because you said, for instance, somebody who's a heroin addict takes 3 days to get clean.
Yes.
But the rest of the time is dealing with the mind and the spirit.
Okay, what we do is we have a very strong spiritual component to our treatment program. And I'll just quote two steps that I actually use. The first one is we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Now, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That is our second step. Our third step is giving our will and our life over to the care of God as we understand it. We do very, very good work in terms of bringing people to the higher power. You find a lot of people that come in are atheists, or they just don't believe in God. We've also had some Satanists which we converted to Christianity or to a higher power of their understanding. And that higher power could be anything. It could be a person, it could be a God, it could be a universe, it could be nature. And we teach them. And we also have an outsourced psychiatrist and psychologist, clinical psychologist, to help us with the treatment of the patients.
And for you at Soul City Institute, Bongani, if I can come in there, how do you then take the mass media interventions that you do, like your radio programs and your TV programs, and translate that into help for people who need it?
Yeah, thanks, Kanye. So we use different forms of storytelling. So we use just a normal drama where we create a fictional story about people's experiences, etc. We also use documentaries, where we follow real life stories of people, and then we tell those stories because sometimes there always has to be that balance. There has to be the balance of telling a story that you create based on people's life experiences, but you also actually then have to tell the real life stories as people tell you, as in the case of the documentary that we just saw earlier. So you can actually then stretch it further by having a series of talk shows on radio where you really get to discuss these real life issues, and for people then they'll call in, ask whatever questions, and then you refer them to the different rehab centers if people really want rehab centers. You can refer them organizations like Tranquility or organizations like SADA if people really need psychological help on an ongoing basis. So it depends what the issues are, and then we always find what would be the best format to tell or address this particular issue.
And do you find that it has had an impact? Like, the programs on radio and TV, how do you measure your impact?
So, I'm sure 90% of the people here who are at least over 24 years, they know Soul City. Because, of the many years of storytelling on SABC and on SABC radio, etc., etc. So we use different methodologies to evaluate the impact that we have in the lives of people. I mean, I certainly remember when Soul City had I'm sure people will remember there was a series on gender-based violence. This man was abusing his wife, and in fact, when that series was on air back then, I was still in high school. I never imagined in my life that in fact I was going to work for an organization and become a producer that does storytelling. But I remember that time my uncle was abusing my girlfriend at that time, and he was a heavy drinker. So when my uncle began nice guy, sweet guy, like when he's sober. But like he would step there, apa kitchen is distracting. Do you understand? But I remembered because for me that was the lived experience that I saw at home. And I'm a TV programs I found about Soul City, which really spearheaded different helplines for women who are in trouble and all that. And the more awareness about these programs, even if you wrong, it's not allowed. You get a different perspective, then you're able to call a police, etc. And then you really get help. So it depends. I mean, at different points we use different methodologies to really evaluate the impact of our programs, but we definitely know that they do.
You've mentioned something quite interesting, and Kumgani, I want to bring you in here. You're doing your master's on the stigmatization of mental and health issues in our black townships or in our black communities. What have been some of your findings? Do you find that people are misinformed? Because most times we just say, hey, baby drug, and it's just a general thing, or when somebody has a mental health issue, we just say, hey, we are fat, they are crazy, you see, ding profit, ding, there's many things, we don't go to the level of distinguishing, is it depression, is it schizophrenia, is it dementia, what is it, we just give it a blanket label. And we deal with, like, everybody comes from township. I don't know, do you guys have township? Everybody's got ihlana where they know, and we've kind of accepted them as part of the community, and we just say, hey, we say and we give it that kind of label. But that is part and parcel of the stigma, isn't it? That people don't want to be known as ihlana.
No, the problem, one of the findings that I've made in our communities, as black people, is that education, it's a huge problem. We don't want to educate ourselves about the thing that has to do with mental health. To us, anyone who has a mental issue, even if it's a stress, stress is nothing. Like it's like the smallest. But to touch people when you're stressed, that means you are shy. That means you are crazy. And as a crazy person, you get isolated. No one wants to be with you. No one wants to help you. No one wants to understand what is it that is going on in your life that makes you feel stressed. When you have depression, it goes up. No one cares why do you have depression. Once you start talking about you want to kill yourself, it's always about attention seeker. This person wants attention, because we promised to give him this and that, then he's threatening to kill himself or to kill herself. So we don't understand what is mental illness exactly as the community. And it's one of the things that I feel like, as you know, in our schools, especially public schools, because I went to a public school from primary to high school, so we don't get taught those things. What is stress? What is depression? How do you differentiate between the two? What is bipolar? What is schizophrenia? What is psychosis? You know, those kind of things. We don't get taught the difference between those illnesses. To us, it's under one blanket, which is uklanya. And when uklanya, you have to be isolated. Hence, when you go to township, you will find someone walking on the street. You know, ugly there and not wearing properly and stuff. At the to us, that's uklanya. While that person, you might find they have schizophrenia or they have bipolar. And when you take them to the hospital and they start getting treatment, they start getting therapy, they start getting medication, they will function badly, even though bipolar is a chronic illness. But it is manageable with proper medication and proper therapy. So once we start understanding as the community, we say, not obviously there are people who are like psychosis, there are people who are schizophrenic and stuff, which they and bipolar obviously they have they fluctuate, like they're not stable. But once we give them proper medication, proper support, we give them therapy, they will be able to function that way. There are people that you cannot even tell if this person has personality disorder. There's a person that you cannot even tell if this person has bipolar. When you see them, and one thing we need to understand as a community, even not to see like in this world right now, we are all somewhere, somehow, we have mental illness. No one is immune to mental illness. Mapumala today, something can happen to you. You can get an accident in a park, and that is going to traumatize you. And that trauma can lead to depression. And depression can lead to you wanting to commit suicide. You know, Mapumala or find out to something has happened to your bank account, you don't have money anymore. That will lead to you having depression. You might find that you lose savings, that might lead to depression. You know, and you might find that you have bipolar, but you don't know. Not like there's nothing that has happened to you that has triggered that bipolar to show up. But today, something can happen to you to trigger you and to trigger that bipolar inside you. And only to find out when you go to hospital and be told that you have bipolar. So it's very important for us to be educated, to educate ourselves. Obviously, we cannot go back to school to do so about bipolar stuff. But today we have internet. We cannot only use internet for WhatsApp or social media, but we can use it to inform ourselves and to teach ourselves. And even as a software, we can have programs where we are taught about bipolar, we are taught about depression and mental health.
Jean, I want to bring you in here, and Mulani was raising some very important points. You also mentioned that you also, and perhaps to a certain extent, are still recovering from I would say, depression and the anxiety. How do you deal with that on a daily basis without wanting to use again? Because those were your triggers.
I am on medication at the moment. I'm on antidepressants, which helps a lot. I also follow, as I said, the 12-step program. I apply it to everything I do in life. Every day, I go to meetings every day. I don't think since I've left rehab there was one day that I didn't go to a meeting. So I do serve, or I try and do service as much as what I can in my state, my physical state. I've got a sponsor. You know, you've got all these things that they teach you that you can use every day in everyday life that will help, help to keep you clean. Ask for help, tell someone, phone someone. If you don't want to go to a meeting, that's when you're supposed to go to a meeting, because that's when it's needed. And yeah.
And in the past 6 months, in terms of the way people have been treating you, you mentioned earlier on that, you had you'd been isolated by your own family because of the trouble that you had caused to them. Do you find that some people are skeptical about you saying you're clean?
Definitely, because I have been clean before without the program. And I have messed up again because it happens, but I didn't have, as I said, I didn't have the tools. Now when people, how can I put it, they're giving me another chance, And it's a beautiful thing, especially after what I've done to them. But saying sorry doesn't make it better anymore, because I've said too many times I've said sorry. So they want to see that I'm doing better. They want to see that I've changed. So it's hard work. It is, but I know I'll get there one day.
I want to remind our audiences that we do have a WhatsApp number, 074 747 7761, 074 747 7761, or alternatively, you can send a piece of, you can write your question and send the piece of paper to the last person in your row. We are going to be opening up questions in a moment or two. But what I also want to do, okay, I want to give you an opportunity to also have your statement, but I also want us to get a parent's perspective. And we do have a lady that works with you, and her name is Rihanna, and in a moment or two, she is seated on the floor, and we'll be giving her a microphone to just share from a parent's perspective, you know, just the journey of the family, dealing with an addict, dealing with the process of recovery, and just, you know, the ups and downs and the challenges that they've been through. But first, let me come to you.
Okay, just as a matter of interest, I'm also an addict in recovery. I'm an addict and an alcoholic. And my drug of choice was prescription medication. I was on benzodiazepines, which is calming and sleeping tablets. I drank a bottle of whiskey a day, and I drank a liter of morphine syrup a day, which I got from medical doctors. And I found that the prescription medication problem in our country is probably one of the biggest problems that we're not addressing.
Right.
And I think that people like yourself can actually look at the prescription medication problem that we have in the country, because we find that doctors prescribe very easily the medicines that are very easily addictive. And they're not informing or educating the patients with regards to their prescription medication, the addictiveness of the medication. So we get the prescription medication, we've got the Nyapa, the heroin family, which we call the downers, and then there's also the uppers, which we call amphetamines, which is cat and crystal meth, which is a lot of the drugs, because most of the people start small. They start with weed or with marijuana, and they escalate. It's a progressive disease. If marijuana doesn't work anymore, they'll try cat. When they try cat, they try crystal meth. So it's an ongoing, long-term problem, and it's a disease of the body.
I'd like us to take the first round of questions. If there are, can those who are going to be walking around with roving mics just lift up their hands so I can see who am I? Can you come to the front so that the audiences can see you? Do we have microphones on the ground? Or are we using the ones that are on the stage? Okay, there are 2 microphones on either side of the room. If you do have questions that have already been submitted to you, you can read those out. If there are people who would like to also raise their hands for questions, I'll also be taking questions for the panel. I'll start with you, my sister. Can we have the mics turned on? Okay, I think they are.
The first question would be, what has the organization done to emphasize that depression is not some demonic attack, but it is a sickness?
All right, I think that's for you, Pumlan.
Okay. As I said, as South African Depression and Anxiety Group, we do school talks, we do community talks, we do radio shows, we do TV interviews. So, and we also have pamphlets that we distribute to communities and to schools, to church, you know, just to teach people about the importance of what, you know, mental health. Actually, depression specifically, it's an illness. You know, when you say something is an illness, it means you cannot go to the doctor and take blood tests and be tested. But it's something that, you know, you sit down with a psychiatrist or with a psychologist, and with the symptoms and the behavior that you are showing, you know, we can tell that you have depression or you're not. And when we do scans in your brain, because in our brains we have chemicals, so we can tell if the person has depression through that. So I know that a lot of people, they tend to think that, you know, any mental illness, you know, you have a demon. No, you don't have a demon. It's an illness. It's just like any other, disease that you have. It's just that you cannot do blood tests to check it. But it's an illness, and it's treatable or it's manageable. So we do a lot of community talks, school talks, church talks, radio shows, TV interviews to make sure that we teach people about the importance of not, confusing depression with, ME and stuff.
All right, my sister on the other hand.
So there are three questions.
I think we'll take all three at the same time, yeah.
Okay. So the first one is it true that most people who end up doing drugs somehow are intelligent and it's just that they are very easily, so their mind is not challenged enough? And then the second question is does our lifestyle today result so much to depression in our society/community? And then the last one is, what strategy can be used to identify people or children at schools and in our community that they are depressed before they can actually then get into or find drugs as being a solution?
All right, I think Eben can take the first question, which was, is it true that drugs are mostly abused by people who are highly intelligent and they just don't know how to manage their intelligence, to paraphrase the question?
Okay, that is not true. That's professors in treatment and tranquility. We've had people that are mentally handicapped in tranquility. The drug addiction sees no race, color, creed, intelligence levels, or high intelligence or low intelligence. It's a problem. It's a social problem. And the answer is no. That's definitely no. There's no intelligent people that take drugs. Definitely not.
Yeah, but let me stay with you. Lifestyle. Do you think that our lifestyle has become more conducive to drug use?
Most definitely. We find that people are very, very stressed. People are depressed. People are anxious. People are paranoid. People are, they're all looking for some kind of medical treatment to actually make them feel better. And it starts with alcohol. It starts with marijuana. It starts with what we call entry-level drugs. People just use them as recreational drugs and they get addicted to them medium and long term. So drugs is a real problem for every single person that walks the streets today, and especially for young people. We find that more and more young people are coming in with weed addiction, coming in with crystal meth addiction, coming in with cat addiction, and you ask them the question, how did you start? And I'll tell you, a friend showed me. And a friend showed me this, and a friend showed me that, and then they try it, and before they can say Jack Rabbit, they're all addicted to the drugs, and they become a group of people that are addicted to the drugs. They actually growing, they actually follow each other, and they go in groups. So it becomes a real problem when it gets to that stage.
Pumlani, on the issue of depression, how do we diagnose, or how do teachers and communities see depressed young people for symptoms and try to intervene before they get into drugs and other issues?
Okay, firstly, you cannot just diagnose someone with depression. No, the person has to be diagnosed by a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Not even medical doctors can diagnose depression. Yes, some they can see that you have depression and they can give you antidepressant, but you have to be diagnosed by a psychologist and a psychiatrist. The reason why is because people tend to say, they tend to use the words depression and stress loosely, very loosely. So they'll go around, even when they see this, we all get, like sometimes we feel down, we feel like we don't want to be stressed. Exactly. When you're going through some difficult times, even if you don't have stress, you just say, stress, yes. Like we just use the term stress loosely, and we tend to diagnose each other with stress very easily. Go around like, it's not really stress, in a taxi, like, you're passing him out in the taxi, and the person starts like shouting at you, I'm going to the stress when, or someone just that, like anything, you find good mama, we have seen this quite in the end, the mood swings, they just go up, those kind of things. So it's very important not to just go around diagnosing loosely. So if you when you say that like the person has a problem, the change of behavior, obviously it's going to be the first thing, especially at school. You know that the child, they usually do well at school. Suddenly their grades are going down. They start bunking school. they start using substances, they start using drugs. These days there's a new trend that is going on among teenagers of using a Sprite and codeine. Codeine is like a fluke syrup that they mix with Sprite and it makes them high. So they use those kind of drugs. And once they start using those drugs, you must know that there's a problem. And you can always give us a call at SAREC, as you saw our numbers, or you can take the child to a psychiatrist or a psychologist so that they can get help. So don't diagnose your child. Because with SASA, you will say your child is ADHD. You don't even know what ADHD means, but so to the ADHD. So it's very important not to diagnose. Go and get professional assistance.
All right, my sister, do you have a question or someone that'd like to ask a question?
Yes. Thank you so much, Kanye, and the members of the panel. I've deducted from what has been discussed today that drugs create, or it offers an escape because one does not know how to deal with the underlying issue. So now my question is, how do we bridge the gap? How do we bridge the gap between me dealing with my underlying issues and me getting to the point where I find escape in drugs? Because I would assume that that's just the symptoms. How do we deal with the root of the problem? And my second question is the role of the church. It's not everybody that has access to your organizations, especially in your underprivileged communities, but it's most people that have access to the organization, the church. So now, how do the church step in, and what programs do you have that will support the church as an organization to deal with depression, to deal with drug abuse? Thank you.
All right, Mogani, I'd like you to take the question on the underlying issues, and maybe some of our other panel members can deal with that, because as she's saying that before it gets to drug abuse, there's an underlying issue that leads to that. Who directly will cause the trigger?
Thanks for that question. It's a very important question, and this is how I try to attempt to answer it. I think all of us, you need to find somebody. If you don't have someone that you trust and that person is very close to you, because that is important. That becomes a person where you offload your problems to. If you don't have such a person, there's a number of helplines which are also on the pamphlet. I think you must never reach a point in your life where you cannot talk to someone, whether it's someone that's close to you, someone that you know. If there isn't anyone that you know, please always try to reach out on the various helplines. In fact, these days is because Panama, please call me. So you could actually send a please call me, and somebody's gonna call you. So the other thing that I want to stress, especially for parents, or other mandamata in general, you see this notion, especially with mothers, that when you discipline abantwana, you don't want to discipline them, but you say, already you have killed the spirit of that child. Because then there is nothing that the father is going to say that will make sense. Because when the father comes, the father just applies discipline. So for fathers, we also need to be very careful in terms of the different strategies and methods that are harsh as means of discipline. Because we often lose teenagers and young people to drugs because we don't create an environment that is open so that they can actually even come to us whenever they've got problems. Because they know you as this ways where you are inapproachable. You cannot approach Ubabaku because already you can predict what they're gonna say.
Right.
So we cannot afford to be Abu Baba Banja. I know sometimes it's very difficult when you've got children, and you've got high expectations, but we need to change our attitude as Abu Baba, to be soft and to be more open so that our children can come to us. Because sometimes you don't even have to say much, but just to give them an ear to listen, it will really save them from making a very drastic decision that can lead them to death sometimes.
Yeah, but I'd like you to handle the question on what is the role of the church and how can the church or faith community start to adopt programs that speak specifically to enabling not only just young people but anybody dealing with substance abuse and other related issues to come and actually be a part of that.
Okay, we have some outreach programs ourselves, and we go on invitations to churches, we go to schools, and we bring the message of drugs and drug abuse to the community. We do that for a specific reason because most of, like the next week was saying to you now, that children are not very comfortable speaking to their parents these days. And it's very easy to open to drug abuse. Children need to have somebody to talk to. So that's the biggest thing is education. So organizations like us are always good avenues. We'll come to the church, we'll come and assist, we'll come and do talks. And educate is the most important thing, is education on drug abuse. And the different types of drugs that are out there. Because every single drug has got a different symptom. I'll give you a couple of examples. Marijuana will make the child what we call mellow. Will make it very calm, collective, slower. Cat will make the child very hyperactive, and they won't sleep. So there's different drugs with different symptoms, and it's education. And organizations like us, we make ourselves available to organizations like the church, to schools, etc., so we can come and assist with education.
My sister, do you have other questions?
Yes, I do.
And there is a brother who's lifted his hand. So I think start by reading the questions, and then we'll take the question from the audience member, and then we'll come back to the panelists.
So the first question is, how do you
Can
help...
you pull the microphone?
Sorry. The first question is, how do you help someone who has a mental illness but is somewhat in denial, as much as they have been diagnosed? As besides organizations, just interactions and in society, how do they help someone who has a mental illness that seems to be in denial? And then the second question is it true that if you're born in a family where the victims or where they use substance abuse, probably your mother or your father, that you as your children are definitely going to inherit those genes or those character traits and somewhat be prone to being an addict?
Yeah. There was a question behind you, the brother there.
Thank you to the panel for this opportunity. My question is, what is the quickest way to identify that you're depressed or you have anxiety? And is depression a phase that one should embrace in the process of growth? Thank you.
Did you get that? My brother, can you just try and repeat that again? I'm trying to... The last part.
Okay, the last part is depression a phase that one should embrace in the process of growth?
Embrace.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Go ahead, Puman.
I'll just start with that. Depression is not a phase. It's not a phase. You know, anyone can be depressed, whether you are, like the youngest person in the country in South Africa to commit suicide was last year. The child was 6 years old. He had himself in school ground. 6 years old. In the world, the youngest child to commit suicide was 3 years old. So us, it doesn't have phase. And you also find someone who's like 50, 60, 70, 80, who's depressed. So if depression doesn't have a specific phase, it doesn't mean that you're growing. We can all be affected by depression. I think I've answered that. And the first part of the question.
I think I got that. Maybe just give us the first part.
The first part of the question.
What is the quickest way to identify that you're depressed or you have anxiety?
Okay. The quickest way to identify that you're in depression, once you start having suicidal thoughts, you must know that you have a problem. Suicidal thoughts, definitely you have depression. You need to get help. Anxiety, obviously, you understand. Anxiety is something that sometimes,
Pull your mic closer to you.
sometimes psychologists and psychiatrists, they usually say, being anxious sometimes is good. Especially when you're environment, the school environment, because it makes you be able to keep on going. But once that becoming consistent, like you cannot function, it affects you. For example, you can't be front of the panel, you can't even talk, you sweat, feel anxious, you're scared, you can't do anything. Once it starts happening to your life, then that's a problem. But if it doesn't affect your life, it doesn't affect submit my paper, I have to do things quickly. I do get anxious, but it doesn't mean that I have anxiety. So I think that answers the question.
We do have a question that's come through on our WhatsApp line. Answer. Okay, it says, if someone drinks a lot, cuts themselves, and they are always angry, how can we help them as a family?
I think we should finish this sister first. She has 2 minutes.
Okay, we'll come to that, yes. Okay, I'll come back to that one. The sister had the question about the genes. Is there a predisposition to having a genes of substance abuse if your parents or somebody in your family did? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes, genes do, that go into the genes, but doesn't mean that definitely you're going to be something that is a user. You can live your life that will lead you not to use substance abuse. But genes do play a role when it comes to even in mental health. One of the reasons for people to have mental illness, I think depression is because of the genes. But it doesn't mean definitely use drugs.
Oh, is that what you wanted to answer? Okay, great. Then maybe let's move on to, if somebody drinks a lot, cuts themselves, and they're always angry, how can we help them as a family?
Okay, we do at-home interventions. So what we do is I get in my car, I drive to your house, and I come and I have an intervention with a potential patient. What we do then is we apply some psychological techniques to make the patient speak to you. We get them to gain their trust, and we get them to speak to you. And normally what we do is we try and get the patient into the rehabilitation center as quickly as possible. You say that the person is cutting himself and he's drinking alcohol. That already is a sign of alcoholism, so he needs to get some professional help. We can assist him by coming to your house. So there's a brochure at the back of the room, you can get our number, and I'm quite happy to come and assist.
I want to bring in, on the family note, I want to bring in Rihanna Van Ace. She is a mom. She works also at Tranquility Group, and she runs some programs. Can we get the microphone to her? Because I just also want her to share some of her own experiences as a family that has dealt with dealing with somebody that has a problem with substance abuse and just some of the challenges. Let me just ask you to just share very briefly with us, here in the audience, some of your own experiences as a family dealing with somebody on substance abuse, somebody who's had a drug problem.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you for everyone that's actually here today. It becomes a very lonely life, we all know that there's help and we can reach out. There are a lot of
Maybe can you stand for us, Rihanna, so everyone can see you?
There's a lot of reasons why we actually don't reach out to other people. And one of those is we feel sorry for our loved ones, because they are the ones that will get labeled, that will be pushed aside. So we try and cover up for them. But what we actually do is we're making life more difficult for the entire family. And it is a number of people in a family. There may be a mum, a dad, 2 brothers and a sister, not even talking about extended family members. We need to understand that every person in that family has got a different kind of relationship with it. So what we do is, we might work out the best way to deal with this is follow this route. So what happens is we cause a lot of conflict, apart from the addiction. And we eventually all communication breaks down, and the addict feels very responsible for what is happening to the family now. What they sometimes do is they just stay away from home. They find another place to live because they see themselves as the problem, the person causing this problem. So it just grows and it grows and it grows. It starts, and you see life is becoming a bit challenging. We can deal with it. The challenges become more. Then it becomes a little bit more hectic. And we find, now we're going to a place where it's very hard to to manage our lives, going to work, but all these challenges at home. And now it's become totally unmanageable. And you think, it can't get worse than this. But eventually it's total chaos. But what happens with family, in our instance, is, we talk about insanity. We actually go insane. The family goes insane because they cannot apply normal communication. It doesn't work because they've got this addict that doesn't understand normal communication. So we start engaging in a very abnormal manner, and it becomes our trend. It becomes our habit to do that. With us, our daughter actually, she went right down to, she was on the street, she went missing. We looked, you start looking all over, you go to all the hospitals in Joburg, you go to the police, you go to the mortuaries, you go everywhere, you can't find this person. So your life becomes totally, it's total chaos, there's no other way. You can't compare it, it's no life. It's just an ongoing struggle. But I have to say, we had instances where we had our disputes at home. And afterwards, now when we talk about it, our daughter now is a counselor. She's studying and she's in recovery. She's been in recovery for almost 4 years. And, now we know we weren't educated properly. And when I talk about education, it's not just about the drugs. It's a lot more than only drugs, It's about keeping communication open. And I actually like to refer to the 4 flags that we've got up here, We get angry and we become very disrespectful towards one another. If we can hold on to God and remember that He created every single one of us in His image, that is we can have such wonderful lives, but we're drawn down. And I always say to people, what gave you hope? I don't know that I was strong enough to hold on to hope. What I do know was that hope was holding on to me. Hope was holding me together. And what really in the inside our daughter was the fact that she, growing up, she used to go to church. That's what she knew. So when she was really derailed of everything, she really struggled and she was wrestling with God. There were times when my husband would say to me, she's gone totally crazy now, listen to her. But there was that basis that was laid down, from childhood. So I want to encourage everybody and say to people, every single minute that you spend with your child is an opportunity to show them your respect. Never talk down to children. Show them your respect. If they see and they experience that they know lesser than anybody else only because of age, that they know that they're worth it, they're worth respect. And when people come with quick fixes, it's easier for them to fall back on that. And then the next one is honesty and integrity. Because we tell our children stories about that are so wonderful when they're little. My little princess, my this, my that. And then suddenly when they get to a certain age, we stop. I'm a granny. I still need to know that I'm precious. We should never stop telling one another that. When you see a stranger, tell them what you see. Don't be scared, We didn't know where our daughter was. And that's what I learned. That God will provide. There we are cannot reach. God has put somebody there. So every single one of us has got, I say, you must love your neighbor like yourself. Who's your neighbor? Right now, this is my neighbor. This is the closest person to me. So in any point in time in your life, the person closest to you in your vicinity, listen to that person. Look him in the eye. Because that's what happened with our daughter. We we didn't know where she was, but there was somebody that knew about the love of God, that could reach out. And in the end, that saved her. So the responsibility is on every one of us, you know. If you have that 1 second to encourage somebody, then do that, because then you are listening. And you know, what better thing in life to do but to represent our Creator and to extend His love.
Thank you so much for
And,
sharing
and
that.
in that, we become one, you know, especially in our country where we've got so many things that's dividing us, you know. If we remember, that is what kept our family together in the end, was that oneness, you know, that we understood. And I mean, together we are stronger. And if anybody wants to, you know, we at Tranquility, I don't actually work for them, I'm just a volunteer. But there are a lot of places that if you go on the internet and you need a little bit of support, you don't have enough knowledge about the problem, or you just need to chat to somebody, then find that place. Often our children don't want to talk to us. They do not want to hurt us. So we must keep our ears open and our eyes, because they may speak to a neighbor down the road or whatever, you know. And then there, our integrity will show. When we listen and we act, and not when we judge and we point. You know, it's time for all of us to stand together.
Thank you so much, Rihanna, there for sharing a very powerful testimony. As we head towards wrapping up our panel discussion, I want us to take one last question. This is the last question that I'm going to take from the screen, and then I will take only one question from the floor, and then I will invite anyone who still has questions to also then get in touch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recognize 3 hands. Can you all three just stand? One, lady in the black, can you stand? I see a hand there. Can you stand? And another one on the side. And those will be our last questions from the floor. My sister, please introduce yourself and give us your question.
Hi, I'd like to greet first our guest speakers or the panel, and then I'd also like to greet the whole church. I'm a bit nervous, but I don't know if what I have is a question or it's just to, while we are still in the line of awareness, add it, okay? Angazi noma the church is ready to hear about such, but I work at a rape crisis center, and I'm a social worker there, so I do trauma debriefing. And then I've noticed that after hearing so many cases, most people will come and say, because basically we deal with victims and not with the perpetrators. I've noticed that most people will come and say, the perpetrators are normally the people you'd never expect, or you'd least expect that they would commit such a thing. So nobody says, you know, the thought that you normally know walking down the street, you know, less likely that's the rapist, but it's the good guy who stays there in the corner, the guy who goes to church. And when I was still at school, did a bit of psychology, I learned a little bit about what they call mental sexual disorders. And I feel that our society has not been very much informed. And I'm saying this because I know in our panel we have somebody who's under mental health, and then we also have somebody who's also in the media as well. That I think the only one time where I've seen it being portrayed in television was in lockdown, where we had a woman who desired younger boys. And I know there's a word for them called pedophiles. There's a lot of words, fetish. Some of you must have heard about these things. But in our society, people, it is a bit of a, you know, it's a silent killer. People don't talk about it because how can you be equal and have, you know, weird and strange sexual desires or these things that you feel. This other time our Archbishop once spoke about imsila yetu that we hide, and we always picture it to be something that is sinful that we do, but there's also those deep desires that people go through and nobody actually ever talks about them. And it's very incriminating as well, because
anybody who rapes or who does anything, yes, is an offender. But I'm saying if there were any form of interventions, even, that they be available in jails as well, in prisons, where they could be very effective, because people who are very good people are rapists, or they have all these sexual urges, serious sexual desires, and then they never really get to talk about them because the society will, stigmatize them. So for people who are, I know South Africa is not ready. I've seen it in overseas where they actually do even have support groups for addicts, or, all these people who have all this. And I know in South Africa, the only one time where I heard that what you call the mental disorder was introduced, I read it in the book, Nervous Conditions, where we actually ever heard of bipolar being witnessed in a black girl. And then after that, that's when we actually opened our minds into that, hey, mental disorders do exist. So there's a variety of them. I'm wrapping up just now. There's a variety of them. But I feel our society needs to do a lot in creating awareness on sexual disorders as well. And, maybe one day we can actually have organizations that, just only deal specifically with such, because it is disorders to some people. I know some people are just predators and just whatnot, but for some, it really is disorders. I hope umzala kangishaya mangifika ekhaya. Thank you. Bye.
Can I have the second question and the third one? I'm going to give you 30 seconds each to just state your points quickly. Okay, can we turn on the mic? Or is the other one now? Okay, here we go.
Uktula, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. My question is, I have a problem in a way. I am a paramedic by profession, and I get to see lots of patients in their last stage of depression, committing suicide. And in a way, I feel helpless because they will ask family members, or some that have not really succeeded in committing suicide, they'll be like, how can we get help? Or some you just wish that you can just say, this is where you get help. But they just reluctant to call because they wait for long, and some they need human touch or just someone they can trust and speak to, and probably they feel like they're getting help. More like someone who's having a heart attack or diabetic emergency, they'll go to a clinic easily and they'll get medication. But for people with mental health and illness and depression, they left with a landline, or if they don't have medical aid, they don't really get easily access to psychologists, psychiatrists, and to get the right help at the right time. So I, in a way, sometimes end up counseling people that are trying to commit suicide, and I feel that it's such a big shoe because I'm not a subject matter expert, and that also makes me feel traumatized when I try to talk someone out of committing suicide, and I end up being called to declare their death. So,
thank you very much, my sister. I think we've got the gist of your question and comments. The last one from the floor.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I really think this is a very good thing for our church, and you can also check and see that we have a lot of questions. But my question really is very simple. I appreciate all the program that has been put in the country that we have, especially the panel that we have. What I'm requesting, or my question is based, other than talks that you do in church, because they don't have impact, we can't follow up on them, we can evaluate. Do you have strategies or programs that you can run together with the church to assess people who are depressed or who are using drugs that you can have within the church and run with us and see what impact we can have in the church?
With the church. So I think that question has been covered already. What I want us to get into is mental and sexual disorders, like our social worker has said. We call them deviance sometimes, sexual deviancy. you know, and like you have your predators, you have your pedophiles, you know, and they differ. And also the lady spoke about suicide, you know, greater help for people with suicide. But let's start with mental sexual disorders.
Okay, yeah. Mental sexual disorders, they're very, very broad. Like there's more than like 20 to 25 different types of sexual disorders that we can talk about, and it can take the whole day, you know, because last year, you know, the psychiatric manual has been you know, there was a new edition which included a lot of sexual mental disorders. But yes, we do have a lot of sexual mental disorders, but I'm going to focus more on rape and pedophiles. You know, especially churches, you know, like I'm a Christian myself, but I'm very critical at the same time. So I'm sorry if I'm going to offend anyone, but especially at church, in churches, we have a lot of pedophiles. We have a lot of rapists who make sure that, you know, they use their power to get into, you know, girls that they want to have sexual desires towards, even boys, because it's not only females who are raped. There's also females who are raped. And remember, when we talk about rape, we don't only talk about you penetrating the female or the boy. We also talk about sexual harassment. The things that you say to a lady, the things that you say to your brother, you know, yazi ngiyakhalela, into ezikanjalo. Those kind of things, they destroy the person inside. So it's very important ukuthi, as a church, you know, you need to have programs that will address those issues. You know, I believe that when you go to, especially the pastors and archbishops, when they go to school for theology and stuff, they also do a little bit of counseling. They teach them how to do counseling and stuff. And I've noticed that most of churches, they also have their own counselors. So I hope that there's also counselors in this church. If you don't have them, you know, I would suggest that maybe you sit down and start, you know, thinking about having counselors who will be able to, you know, to help a congregation when they have problems, because pedophiles are there. When we talk about pedophiles, we talk about, you know, all the people who will target kids. You know, females, they will target boys. Females, they will target girls. You find male who target boys, male who target girls. You know, it goes both ways. And even in South Africa, it's a big issue. Unfortunately, as the sister said, it's not a topic that we're open to discussing in most cases. You know, we don't even have organizations that discuss those issues, because it's still a taboo thing in our community. There's still a lot of stigma in our community. So my suggestion to the church is, you know, let's open up and talk about such issues, you know, especially among youth.
I want to bring you in here, Bongani, because, you know, the lady said, how do we start putting such taboo topics in our mainstream media, especially dealing with a conservative society?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a very challenging one, in that, you know, I guess every, you know, sexual problem often is very shameful. I mean, when you think about HIV, for instance, you know, like it's mainly contracted through sex. You know, one of the reasons why a lot of women don't even report rape, you know, as an example, is because of the shame, but also, you know, the person that has actually raped them, you know, their status, the kind of a person that they are in society, etc. You know, there are some of the problems because of the, you know, very strict policies that we have in South Africa. Things like rape, then we're able to do, you know, different media awareness campaigns to really, you know, try to address it. Some of the problems, because, you know, they are not necessarily a national priority, you know, so often they don't necessarily get their space within mainstream media.
Wouldn't you say rape, though, is a national priority?
No, I'm saying, I was saying that rape, there are a lot of campaigns around rape.
Right.
I'm talking about the other, you know, disorders.
Right.
You know, as she was mentioning, like the different types, and Pumlan was saying there's about just over 25 of them. So I'm saying like rape and pedophiles, you know, because we've got very strict, you know, policies and very clear legislation around those, so we are able to, you know, to tackle them. but others because we don't have clear policies on them, mainly because they're not mainstream, or they're not a priority for the country. Because remember that a priority becomes a priority because there's problems with it. A lot of people report,
Yeah.
it causes family breakdown, etc., etc. Then that's how then they make it to become a national priority. So unfortunately, others, because they're not a priority, but also we don't necessarily have very clear policies and legislation to really how to address them. Because it's one thing to address an issue, but also you want people to do something about it. So if there's no clear legislation around, what is it that people can do? This is how you report. When you report it, this is how the police need to handle the issue, etc., etc. So I'm not saying that they don't exist. They do exist. It's just that in terms of the how frequent and how big those disorders are. So that's how they often they don't necessarily then get their way into mainstream media.
In closing up, the question on suicide and getting people greater assistance, I think we have touched on it, and I'm going to park it because we do have the pamphlets and we do have the information that we have given out, and so that is also an available resource. I know you do have one thing to say about it, so I'm going to allow you to say it in your wrap up, and I'm going to start with you, Jean. Maybe if you can pass the mic to her. In just closing up, I'm going to ask all of you to just give us a minute conclusion or so. Jean, for you, I mean, it's a long journey ahead. And you've come so far and you've really achieved so much. I mean, what are some of your aspirations just moving forward, in this journey of yours?
Like, what would I like to do?
Yes, pretty much.
Well, I'd really like to help people like me. I would like to tell my story if someone can take something from what I've been through that can help them to help themselves or help the next person, that'll be actually more than enough for me.
So pretty much continuing to share your story.
Yes.
We thank you so much for joining us, and we do also applaud you for the journey that you had, and we look forward to seeing you in a year's time, 5 years time, 10 years time, and we do know that your journey has not been in vain, so to speak. Somebody today, even in this hall, I do believe has been changed because of your story. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Phumlani. Phumlani, in wrapping up, it's a tiring job. I mean, being on the phone, listening to people in desperate need of help. Maybe in closing, you can tell us how you keep yourself sane, without having to absorb the problems and internalize them to a point where you also need help yourself. Do you guys debrief as counselors? How do you then help without making sure that you're still keeping your own space sane?
Okay, we do debrief, and we also, if debrief it's not enough, there's psychologists that we can go to. Even ourselves, we do have psychologists that we can go to get help. We at some point we all need psychologists. But what really keeps me strong and keeps me going is I love helping people. I wanted to be a lawyer, but unfortunately when I got to university, a change of thoughts, and I did something different. So me being able to assist someone, who's going through a difficult time, who wants to commit suicide, on the other side of the phone, who has a gun, who's saying I'm going to shoot myself, but at the end of the call, I was able to let them put the gun away, let them go to hospital, help them to go to hospital so that they can get help. It's one of the things that really motivates me and help me to keep going.
Thank you so much for joining us, Phumlani, and we applaud you for all the work that you do. And just before I let you go, can counselors still come and apply to work at SADC?
Yes,
Volunteers.
you may apply. You can go to our website. On the pamphlet, there's a website there. There's a
a link of volunteers. You can go and and just click there, fill up the form, send it to us, then we'll be able. But you have to be around Joburg, unfortunately, because we only have one office in all over the country in Joburg, but we do travel all over the country. And before I leave, all our contact details are toll free. So you don't need airtime to call us. Even if you have airtime, it won't eat your airtime. They're all toll free. We pay for you to call us so that we can be able to assist you. That's how much we really want to assist you people. So don't be scared with our airtime. When you need to call, give us a call. A counselor will be there 24 hours.
Thank you so much. Evan?
Okay, for me, I think I'm the most blessed person in the world to be able to counsel addicts. Addicts are 10% of the world population, and we're a very unique group of people. We're deep, we're spiritual, and an addict that is sober is the best worker in the world. I can assure you, if you want to employ an addict that is sober for X amount of time, you can't go wrong with employing an addict. Give us a chance. I'm an addict in recovery. I'm clean 6 years, and I was given a chance. So if your son, your child, your friend is in need of help or needs a chance, give them a chance. You won't make a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And to you, Bongani, I'm interested to know what can we look forward to on our screens, what's coming up?
Every Monday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we've got a talk show for young people called Rise. People can actually start watch. I think we are on episode 5, if not episode 6 now. Every Monday at 5 o'clock. We're in the process of developing another, a series of short films, about 8 films, but it's gonna be aired next year on SABC. I think, one of the difficulty with how we do drama is because, we don't do drama for the sake of entertainment, but it's about telling very difficult stories in a manner that will resonate with people, but also in a manner that will challenge them. We are not the queen. So we really take time in research to really understand the issues that we are dealing with. So that is why we don't have Soul City every day of the week, because it really takes time to tell the kind of stories that we are telling. Because you want to tell stories of truth, you want to reflect people's truth, people's journeys, people's frustration, and the kind of help that then people can sort for themselves, so that then they are able to turn around their situations for the better.
Thank you so much to each and every one of you for joining us this evening. Can we please give them a round of applause? Thank you so much for taking time. And at this moment, I would like to hand over to our program director, Babatemba. I'm not quite sure where I'm handing over to, but we thank you so much, and I think we can go back to our seats. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Siyabonga kakhulu to Umamkanye and our panelists. This has been a very informative session, Bazalwan. Do you agree? This has been a very informative session. Ngifisa ukuthi kulesi sikhathi, as we prepare to move on with our program, ngokuhlonipha ngicela umholi just ukuba namazwi as we wrap up this session, sizoqhubekela to the next session.
Thank you so much. Just want to thank everybody that has shared. Just want to start with you, Jean, for sharing your story with us. With such openness, such simplicity in terms of the story, and just allowing yourself to be vulnerable with people, not just this group, to every single person that you've been speaking to throughout the country, and every single person that you are going to come across and speak to. It is such a an honorable thing, and by that I mean it is the greatest work anybody can do, to reach out and touch a life, and use your story to do that. And we applaud you for your courage, and we wish you well on your journey, and we are very proud of the courage that you have established over the months, as you said, that you have been clean for the past 6 months, and we wish you well on your journey. Thank you so much for sharing your story as well, from a family perspective. You know, as families, we go through so much, and I love what you said when you said we often cover up, and in covering up, the aim is to protect the person, and to protect the dignity of the person, and also to hold it together as a family, but often we cause more damage than good. And a lot of us in this room can share a testimony of various people in our own families who have gone through that journey, and sometimes because we did not speak up, or we did not raise the flag, we never managed to assist them. I often share the story in the church that my father was an alcoholic, and I later, when I was studying psychology, realized that my father was depressed. But because we did not have a language for it, as Africans, as communities, we didn't have a language for it. Nobody knew that this man was depressed. But a lot of things went wrong in his life. He lost businesses, he lost his family, he lost himself. And at a very late stage in his life, we tried to help him. And I remember when I referred my father to a psychologist for the first time, he was in his 50s. He spent an entire hour just sitting there in silence, because the story and his pain had so crystallized that it was impossible for anybody to access him. And I think we have a lot of people who may be going through a lot of that. And it's difficult. I think the most difficult part is to start. The most difficult part for any person is to find words and put words together to say, this is what I'm struggling with. And once you've gone through that hurdle, you've found words for it, and somebody is listening and not judging. And I think that journey becomes a little bit more easier. Never gets easy, I'm sure, but it gets a little bit more easier. So thank you so much for sharing that story for us. Thank you, Kanye, for holding it together so beautifully. For holding it together so beautifully and so professionally, and for constantly drawing out the various angles of the story and drawing out from the panel the nuggets that I believe have been helpful to the church. And to our panelists, thank you so much for bringing your professional experience, your professional knowledge, and for the work that you do. We honor you. I think this again is one of the greatest works that anybody can do, the greatest calling that anybody can respond to reach out and touch a life. And for the wonderful work that you do with young people, thank you so much. I think to the church, for me, this is, I don't even want to say it's the beginning. It's one of the stepping stones that we are putting along the way to get us into a space where we can talk about these things. Like I just said now, I think as people, and I will constantly say as African people, we have not had a language. You know, elokishini tiwa, hey, izifo zabelungu lezi, depression into zabelungu. It seems like it is something for, or an illness for the elite people and for strange people, but we've sat with and lived with, and yeah, we've lived with these kinds of issues for a very long time. And I think as a church, as an African church, we don't have a program that is structured enough because we've never had a language for it, and we've never had a skill to deal with it. And one of the things that the church, and not just the Church of the Holy Ghost, but the church broadly does, we say pray for it, or pray about it rather. And I'm a strong believer in prayer. Prayer changes things. But depression is one of those things that puts you in such a lonely place that when you say to a person, pray about it, it puts them in the furthest corner, because prayer is often a solitary practice. And so when somebody is already in a state of loneliness and in a state of isolation, and our answer as a church or as Christians is simply pray for it or pray about it, it is not enough. In fact, it abdicates responsibility, it pushes the person away. And so I want to challenge the church. I want to challenge leaders in the church, female leaders, male leaders, and every single person that works with young people as well as older people. Some of the people that are living with depression are the most successful people. They walk amongst us and they are successful and they appear to have it together. And when we listen to the stories and we look at the lifestyle, we realize how much it is costing them. I reached out to, or rather earlier this week in fact, one of the people that some of you as young people might know, a guy called Sbu, who makes socks. And I'm sharing the story because it's out there in the media. Sbu makes socks. And some of you might know Sbu skinny socks. In fact, we produced those as a church last year. And did I say we produced those? We didn't produce those. We ordered. I'm taking credit for the production. We ordered the socks for one of our campaigns last year. And Sbu is a successful young man, 27 years old, makes incredible socks, beautiful product, has put it out in the market, is in Markhams, which is a great achievement for a 27-year-old. Posts on social media on Monday and says, I've had enough. It's tough, things are not coming together, I'm not making the sales, and I can't do this any longer. Disappears for 3 days and everybody's worried about him. Family and friends can't reach him and they are worried and obviously are imagining the worst. He re-emerges on Thursday and fortunately and thankfully he is okay and he has reached out and gotten help somewhere. But one of the things that I took away from that is here's somebody who's trying his best and in our eyes appears to be successful and is successful. But the cost of success for each one of us, the cost of driving that Merc, the cost of having that car, the cost of looking so pretty is such that it wears you down. Reach out and speak. As a church, we are saying tonight, we want to listen. We may not be good at it at first, but we want to listen. We want to help. We want to walk with you on the journey. And one of the things that we are going to have to learn as a church is to be less judgmental. Because a lot of the things that you are going to come with to us are the things that for the longest of time, since our birth as a church, we've called sin. But today we need to find a new language for it to say, well, it may appear sinful, but it's a problem that you are dealing with that cannot just be sorted out through confession. And confession is important because it's a first step of accepting I've got a problem, but it needs to be followed up with help and less, in fact, not even less, non-judgmental help. So it's a challenge to us as leadership. It's a challenge to the parents. It's a challenge to the entire church to create space where we normalize some of the issues people are dealing with and we respond to it with more than just let's pray about it. And I'm looking forward to a program, a sustainable program, a structured program that we can work out together that will help not only this generation, but the generation that's coming. And everybody has a fresh encounter and a fantastic life. Thank you so much.